Welcome, Slayton. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, let's jump right into it. Wireless and spectrum are key to our nation's competitiveness. And let's start with Carolina West. Why don't you give us a little bit of background about Carolina West and how you are keeping your community competitive?
Well, Carolina West is a small carrier providing service in the rural mountains of North Carolina. Competitive to me and to Carolina West is providing fixed and mobile broadband to families so that they can stay connected to school and to work. Many of these communities, Carolina West is their only connectivity. Recently, we launched 5G in Elk Park, North Carolina, providing that community with access to services like telehealth and other things that you and I take for granted. Advanced connectivity is still out of reach of far too many Americans. Competitive is also about supporting business and supporting government, how they attract employees, how they leverage technology, how they compete locally and sometimes even globally. We have a large manufacturer, GE Aviation, in our area. Supporting also competitive from Appalachian State University and their desire to use technology to leverage investment into our region. Mobile broadband has become a must for starting a new business and in some cases just keeping the existing businesses that we have in our area.
Well, that's interesting. Tell us a little bit about how wireless is changing manufacturing and bringing jobs and growth to your region.
Well, GE is a great example of a company that's leading recovery in manufacturing in our area. We have other furniture companies like Barnhart Furniture that are definitely interested and want to invest. For us, supporting those companies means providing them with connectivity where their employees live. And then it also means really demonstrating to them how private networks can help improve their efficiency. Productivity. And to do that, really, we need more spectrum and we need to take advantage of tools like network slicing.
Interesting. You mentioned last year when we were on this stage that you had rolled out 5G 18 months faster than you did 4G.
That's right.
And a lot of that is probably to places like Hickory and Boone.
Right.
Now, you just mentioned Elk Park. And why don't you give us a little bit of an insight as to how 5G is expanding to some more rural areas?
Yeah. So we invest heavily in our network every year, and we'd like to expand it even farther. But we definitely need some help doing that. I'll give you an example. One of our customers is the Beach Mountain Police Department, and for obvious reasons, they need connectivity over their entire footprint. Today we provide them with 70, maybe 80% of coverage that they need, and some of that is provided by legacy USF support. And so I know where they need coverage, but in those areas there's not a lot of traffic, and so that means running more fiber and building more towers, and it's pretty expensive. So I definitely need help, and that's where the 5G fund comes in to help finish the job.
The 5G fund. So what does a successful 5G fund look like to Carolina West?
Well, I would say first and foremost, it's delivering on the promise of universal service that was outlined in the 1996 Telecom Act. Looking at 5G and the FCC, I really appreciate them moving forward on the 5G fund. There are three main elements to me. The size of the fund is the first one. $9 billion is what the FCC has outlined. I'm concerned that that's not large enough. I want to make sure that it's big enough to cover the area as outlined by accurate FCC maps. The other element is timing. I think it's important to align the 5G fund with the BEAD fund to make sure that we spread or push federal funding as far as we can to cover as many Americans. Finally, I do have concerns about requirements that go along with the awards, and things like ORAN and cybersecurity mandates could add complexity and additional cost and cause us to not cover as many roads and homes.
The 5G fund, clearly critical, but let's widen the lens just a little bit more to maybe Universal Service Fund more broadly. What do you think policymakers should do to make that sustainable?
Well, I think we should fix the contribution mechanism for USF. Carriers need some clarity and consistency when investing in their networks, and we've seen programs like Rip and Replace and the Affordable Connectivity Program, with congressional appropriations, can be extremely disruptive to customers and to carriers. USF by statute should be sufficient and predictable. That type of clarity and consistency allows carriers to have the assurance that they can continue to invest in their network upgrades and new builds. I want to commend the bipartisan USF work group, Senators Lujan and Senators Thune. Also, there are several bills that that are considering contribution reform. Some considering including big tech and over-the-top providers and edge providers. Those companies get a lot of benefit from the networks that we build. I think it makes a lot of sense, and as we expand our networks, I think they would also have opportunities to grow.
Great answer, Slayton. Let's switch to my favorite topic, which of course is spectrum. We're going to have another year without an auction. What is the impact of that on your business?
Well, Meredith, as you know, from the time that the government allocates spectrum to the time that the subscriber actually uses that spectrum could be as much as a decade of time that passes. There are several carriers that are spectrum that need spectrum and they don't have it, so they're waiting for the next auction. Looking at those carriers and trying to keep up with the demand of their customers and customer usage. Also, those carriers may take years before they roll out the latest technology or even 5G. So that additional delays would also create pent-up demand for spectrum and increased prices. That's really an existential issue for small carriers like Carolina West.
Sure, of course. What would you like to see in terms of progress this year on spectrum?
Well, I think just looking at our overall needs and what we need this year. I'd like to see obviously the FCC get their spectrum auction authority renewed. I'd also like to see a pipeline of specific spectrum bands and then a schedule of future auctions.
Me too. If you knew, Slayton, what what future spectrum access looked like, what would you do with it?
Well, in Western North Carolina, we have a lot of Christmas tree farms. I would approach Shatley Farms, one of my customers, and I'd like to offer them a full suite of precision agriculture, help them to conserve water and to control disease and pests on their farm. There's a lot of things that I'd like to do if I had more spectrum and more infrastructure.
Okay, folks, so spectrum is going to save Christmas. That's the headline. Slayton, in DC we have a lot of discussion about full power and spectrum. What is your perspective?
Well, I would say anyone that is looking at reduced power spectrum is probably not building a network in rural America. That drives up additional costs, more fiber, more towers, more universal service support to cover rural areas. And let me give an example. We have a town, Crossnore, North Carolina. So we have both CBRS spectrum and C-band spectrum. So we looked at covering Crossnore, North Carolina, a population of 140 people. with CBRS, so limited power CBRS, it was going to take 2.5 times the infrastructure to cover that area versus full power C-band. So using full power C-band, we're able to get to communities as small as Crossnor.
I love that you give real examples. It really helps us because so much of our debate in DC is really theoretical and abstract. This is a great way to start the day. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, Meredith, I'd like to thank you for having me. I'd also like to thank you and CTIA for your leadership in the industry. I can't remember a time where our industry and carriers were aligned on so many issues. You know, and I think it's really important for us as an industry and a nation to lead globally in wireless. You know, I think hopefully DC hears when I say, we really need to fulfill the promise of universal service, and we need more spectrum so that we can help our consumers and our businesses compete in the future.
Thanks for being with us, Slayton.
Thank you.